Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us this evening for our midweek reflections. So, in our second part for this series, as we talk about fears and we talk about our faith in the midst of these fears, I wanted to think about what it means to have faith. Because last week we talked about what it means to bring our fears to God. And in no matter what state we may be in, to just come and not be afraid. And to know that even though sometimes it may look like Jesus is sleeping, that in fact, Jesus is the answer to our prayers. So this week, I wanted to talk about that faith that brings us to Christ. I think that a lot of times when we think about the fears that we have, it's sometimes things that we don't quite understand. The thing about our fears is that a lot of times they can determine how we react and how we live our lives. And instead of being able to come to a perspective that is faith based, we instead approach every circumstance and every part of our lives through these fears. And we look at our life through that lens. And I think that a lot of times when we do that, we don't honestly know that we're doing that. We don't know that we are approaching this circumstance or this part of our life through the lens of fear. We feel a lot of times that when we approach it, we are just simply doing what we think is best. I wanted to bring before us a passage, and it's a passage from Mark chapter 10, verse 13 through 16. And it says, "People were bringing little children to him in order that he might touch them, and the disciples spoke sternly to them. But when Jesus saw this, he was indignant and said to them, 'Let the little children come to me. Do not stop them, for it is such as these that the kingdom of God belongs. Truly I tell you, whoever does not receive the kingdom of God as a little child will never enter it.' And he took them up in his arms, laid his hands on them, and blessed them." I think that when we think about the faith of children, just as Jesus was talking about it here, we kind of brush it aside. We say, yeah, I have a faith. I have a faith like a child. I can accept what Jesus is saying like a child. But the reality is, we're a lot like the disciples. We're a lot like the disciples in saying, no, 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 this isn't how it's supposed to be. No, 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 you shouldn't do it this way. As we grow from the simplicity or the faith-like, childlike acceptance, we become more so like these adults who have everything boxed up, and we think we know how it should be, and we think that we need to address everything in this way. And we look at the circumstances or the pieces of our lives that we don't quite understand or we have trouble accepting, and we box it up and we put it into the boxes of our fears and the boxes of what we believe how it should be, instead of putting it into the grand scheme of what God is doing and accepting and knowing that God is working in the midst of our lives, even if we don't quite understand it. I think that it's difficult to do that. Making those changes, being willing to accept what we don't understand, is very difficult. It's difficult when Jesus is asking us to have a faith like a child, to just simply say, Jesus, your way is right, my way is just my way, and your way is better. It's difficult to do that because a lot of times we want to take control of it. We want to box it up. We want to put it into the little spheres of our lives because we think that everything should be this way. When Jesus is saying, no, come to me with the simplicity of faith, of just accepting and believing in what I have for you. I think that that's difficult because when we think about our lives, there are so many things that come into our lives that play into all the different parts of our lives in different ways. And we have a lot of hurts, and those hurts build upon hurts. We have a lot of stresses, and the stresses build upon stresses. We have responsibilities, and these things build upon each other. And we have all this baggage and all this stuff that we carry that we don't know how to just lay them down at the feet of Jesus. So my question to you, as we talk about our fears and we talk about the faith that Jesus is asking us to have, is, are you willing to lay down your life at the feet of Jesus? I hope that when we think about our lives, we are able to come before Christ with just a minute, with just a moment, and it may be a start, but it's at least a start, and come before God with our lives and say, Jesus, I need you. Next week, I hope that you will join us again as we end this series. And I hope that as you continue to think about what it means to live your life in love with Jesus and in faith with Jesus, that you will be able to come before God with all your fears and all that your life is, and love Jesus more. Thank you and have a good night. We'll see you next week.